what is language arts? Really? As Rainbow consultants, we get this question daily from parents. What's included in language arts? What do I need to teach it? If I use this program, will I have a complete language arts? Our goal in this video is to examine language arts, also called English language arts. And to simplify, I'll probably use the abbreviation ELA a lot. To examine its inherent complications, we're going to discuss all the necessary components and how language learning progresses, and ultimately, we'll learn how to choose curriculum that meet your specific needs. We'll be covering a lot of ground in our video, and you'll find our Cultivating Language Arts handout helpful. This handout is linked in the show notes, and you'll also find it on our resources page at rainbowresource.com. And heads up, at the end of this video, we're going to talk over 2 fictitious parents' struggles with ELA and apply what we've been learning to their situation. As parents, we know how to use the English language, but what do we need to teach language arts? And before we talk teaching it, we need to figure out what it really is. Language is the way that we communicate messages. Think of it as a code. And using a language is all about accurately sending that code and receiving that code. And when you speak or write, you're sending a message. And sending messages is called encoding. And to truly receive and understand that message you're sending to me, I have to decode it. And I decode a message by listening or reading. The 4 main components of language learning are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Keeping these 4 categories in mind helps us remember generally what skills need to be addressed, no matter what language we're learning. However, there are several factors that complicate learning a language. Language is, first off, symbolic. Remember that language code? And just like a grapevine growing on a trellis, language changes and grows, but it also follows very systematic conventions. Language requires both creativity and logic. It's simultaneously imaginative and restrictive. And if you'll allow me to rewrite that old children's song, we are literally using our brain, our eyes, mouth, ears, and hands, all in conjunction with each other. No wonder language learning is challenging. And if the language you're learning is English, it comes with its own unique set of challenges. But be encouraged. Remember, you've been teaching your child English for several years already. Your children have been listening to and speaking it for some time now. And you've also been using English in all 4 skill areas for much longer. And you can teach your children language arts. Let us help you get the right tools to do so. So now we have a basic idea of what language arts covers. But before we figure out the how, the first question we need to consider is why we're teaching ELA. Everybody knows we have to teach ELA. It's not an optional subject. But what are our goals in teaching this subject to our kids? Ultimately, we really want our children to become proficient users of English, maturing into confident communicators. The problem comes in defining proficient. How we define proficiency and how our children get there is yet another reason language arts is complicated. So your definition of language proficiency is absolutely crucial to consider. Basically, we want our children to be able to competently receive and send messages in the 4 main divisions of language: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Historically, ELA education tends to focus on the reading and the writing skills because acquiring them requires intentionality. At a fundamental level, we can define proficiency as a student being able to comprehend what they're reading, at least at their grade level, and also being able to compose, at least at their grade level. This basic definition of proficiency serves as a minimum baseline, but it won't fit your needs just right. Your definition will vary depending on your goals for your specific child. For example, if your child has unique learning challenges or advanced learning goals. As a result, your homeschool's definition of proficient will most likely vary from your best friend's definition. Here at Rainbow, we want to help you define ELA proficiency for your specific child, to help you determine your ELA goals for each child, and ultimately to help you select the curriculum and the tools that will help your child achieve that level. And this is where Rainbow's Resources Family acronym can help. Our consultants use this acronym to help homeschool parents hone their educational goals and target their curriculum direction. And we're going to apply this acronym to help you figure out why you're teaching ELA and what you'll use to teach it. Each of these factors work together to answer those questions. F is for faith and philosophy. A, approaches to teaching. M, money. I, individually, your student. L, your family's lifestyle. And Y, you as parent and teacher. The first three of these I like to call the content factors, and the last three are the people factors. F is for faith philosophy. In this category, we typically examine whether you want faith-based or other important philosophies to be a part of your course content. And that's definitely crucial here. Your goals of communication, but also what your child reads and is exposed to content-wise. But for language arts, this F will also encompass your philosophy of language. Ask yourself these questions. What faith philosophies do you want to emphasize? What's the purpose of communication? How valuable are communication skills to you? How important are each of the four, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, both as independent subjects and also in relationship to each other? Answering these questions will help you discover your why. Why you want your child to be proficient, and your why will affect what you teach. For example, if you believe the main reason for studying ELA is to gain and share information, that belief will affect your curriculum choices, what you teach, and how you teach it. As a result, you might emphasize primarily nonfiction reading and essay writing. Or if you believe that the goal of communication is to glorify God, that belief will affect what content your student reads, their purpose for how they write, and what they write about. So before you start looking at a bright, shiny curriculum, first spend time defining your what and why of ELA, the faith philosophy. Working through this step will naturally filter out curricula that defines ELA different than you do. Figuring out this F step will keep you from wasting your valuable time examining curricula that don't match your criteria, no matter how wonderful those programs are. The next part of our acronym is also a major consideration that will help target your choices. The A in family is approaches. For ELA, approaches will include the different teaching styles and curriculum methods, but it will also include how the curriculum believes students become proficient in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Warning! There are so many different approaches and variations of these approaches that you can easily feel overwhelmed. To understand different ELA teaching approaches, let's take a quick moment to talk about the basic way language develops and the components needed no matter the approach you use. Language learning starts out with sounds, which create words, and we put those words into phrases and sentences, which makes meaning, and we gradually learn to apply meaning to a whole bunch of specific situations for different purposes and for different audiences. Now, formal language arts instruction traditionally emphasizes reading and writing skills. We'll focus on these two skills, but the components we'll discuss are also mirrored in listening and speaking and are easily applied to the oral side of communication. Language skill progression is easily constructed of 8 major categories. And as you examine your ELA curriculum, look for how these 8 basic categories fit together, when each is taught, and how in-depth each one is taught. We have phonics and reading instruction, penmanship, spelling, vocabulary, grammar usage mechanics, abbreviated as GUM, composition, reading comprehension, and literary analysis. The first 5 of the 8 skills are often emphasized in the lower grades, typically in one of 2 ways. Curriculum publishers, depending on their methodology, may teach these 8 skills separately, in progression, or they may weave the skills together simultaneously. Let's start with what are typically considered the first skills in formal instruction. Our Cultivating Language Arts handout also includes these definitions for you. Phonics and reading instruction. Here we emphasize the decoding skills, learning that letters represent sounds. And we learn to sound out and also memorize words. And we start recognizing that these words represent concepts and thoughts and complete ideas. Handwriting and penmanship is learning to write letters and then words in print, also called manuscript, or in cursive. And then in spelling, we learn that these letters represent sounds and how they fit together in a specific way to make words. There are rules, and there are also exceptions to those rules. And with vocabulary, we learn that these different words have meanings, and as vocabulary skills develop, the kinds of words children learn become progressively more numerous, nuanced, and diverse. For example, experts say a basic English native speaker fluency is knowing and competently using about 10,000 words. Contrast that with good old William Shakespeare, who used more than 20,000 very unique and self-created words, and a typical college graduate who knows about 23,000 words. And of course, there are varying opinions about what those words are made up of. Next, we have GUM, which stands for 3 different yet interwoven components. GUM is what helps us use the language correctly and make it understandable to others. The G in GUM stands for grammar, the rules governing language, putting the words in an agreed-upon order and using the proper form of each word with each other. For example, in a sentence, the subject and the verb must always agree. And if the subject is plural, the verb must also be in plural form. And that's why we say they are and not they is. The U in GUM stands for usage, using each word in English correctly. And it's easy to confuse usage with grammar, but they are different. Usage focuses on using the individual words properly. For example, do we say fewer people or less people? And is there a rule that affects that choice? And in that question just now, should I have used the word effect or affect? Which one is more better? Is irregardless a word? And then we have the last word, mechanics. That's the punctuation and capitalization that you use to properly convey the message. Mechanics helps communication make sense. Commas, periods, capital letters, for example. So GUM, grammar, usage, and mechanics are those intricate things that work together to help us make sure we're communicating effectively. Those are the 5 foundational ELA skills. As a child's ability in these mature, they will practice applying each of these using the last 3 language arts components. We apply the individual components of language in composition, reading comprehension, and literary analysis. And your child learns how to weave all the individual skills together and apply them practically, improving their ability to use them, cultivating their language arts skills, aiming toward your ELA proficiency goals for them. And composition is the writing of sentences and then progressing to putting those sentences in logical order into paragraphs and connecting the paragraphs together in longer formats for a variety of purposes like discussing, evaluating, convincing, researching, and more. In addition, they will learn to adapt their writing to address a variety of audiences. And the reason the child is writing and the audience they're writing to affects everything else on the page, including how they put the ideas and paragraphs together. And once a child is reading sentences and paragraphs, we introduce reading comprehension. And in this skill, we process or decipher a written message to understand the meaning. Comprehension skills also include assimilating the information we read with what we already know. In comprehension, we demonstrate that we truly understand the messages we are receiving. Comprehension involves skills like finding the main idea, sequencing ideas, putting them in the proper order, summarizing, and more. Comprehension skills also help us process different kinds of writing styles, including nonfiction and textbooks. Being skilled in comprehension allows us to use English so that we can learn more, and that's an extremely important educational goal. The last of the 8 language arts components is literary analysis. Messages written in literature are communicated differently than they are in nonfiction, so we have to acquire different skills to understand literature, such as understanding figurative language, like metaphor and simile, interpreting the author's skill or meaning, understanding different genres, such as poetry or short story and novel, for example, and devices like foreshadowing and even humor. You'll want to look for each of these 8 as you examine your curricula. A curriculum might just handle one of these, like spelling, or they might have a couple put together, like gum and composition, or they might combine reading instruction and literary analysis. For some help, take a look at our language arts comparison charts, and these will identify which of the 8 subjects are covered and which ones aren't. How and when these 8 are taught and developed, what's emphasized, and the goals of communication will vary depending on the approach, the methodology the curriculum uses, and what types of writing and reading skills are taught and how they're taught, and even when in a student's language development they are taught, also are affected. Consider whether the curriculum is using a whole book or an excerpt approach, whether the students read entire books or just parts. In an ideal world, we all want complete language arts. A complete language arts is super convenient and cohesive, and I for sure would prefer making one decision rather than 8. But be aware that any curriculum labeled complete will often expect you as teacher to add in spelling or handwriting, since these skills develop differently from one child to the next. You might also find that a complete curriculum doesn't study a topic to the depth that you desire for your child. Honestly, there really are very few curricula which will handle all 8 skills exactly the way you desire at all the grades, or that will perfectly fit every child in your family. There is a wide variety of language arts curriculum out there, but there are 4 main approaches that dominate the homeschool world. The traditional approach is probably what we as adults are most familiar with from our own learning experience. A traditional approach is heavily teacher-dependent and directed. Concepts and content flow from the teacher to the student, and these programs will typically include a teacher guide, a textbook, a student workbook, and tests. And to boil down this approach, ELA concepts are introduced, students practice the skills, and then they're tested. A traditional approach will typically teach the 8 ELA skills in the early grades as individual components or by interweaving them. And another distinctive is that grade-level reading assignments will either be included in the student textbook as selected shorter pieces, such as essays, short stories, or excerpts from literature. In some cases, a program might include some additional grade-level readers. Examples of traditional approach curricula include Bob Jones, Abeka, and Purposeful Design Language Arts. Calvert and Rodden Staff are traditional approaches for the early grades. Voyages in English focuses on writing and grammar in the lower grades. Excellence in Literature takes a traditional yet whole book approach to literature in high school. A second popular approach is the classical method. And this is one of the oldest learning methods in the Western world that has seen a resurgence in the last century. The classical approach is also heavily dependent on the teacher, who will direct instruction, written and oral work, and will guide discussion of classical literature as models of good writing, with an aim at mastery in all the subjects. There's typically a strong emphasis on studying Latin as well as a foundation for thinking and for learning English. The teaching method utilizes the developmental stages of the trivium: grammar, logic, and rhetoric stages. The grammar stage, typically lower elementary, emphasizes memorization and recitation. The logic stage builds on these by organizing and synthesizing the concepts and then having the child ask why. The rhetoric stage takes the knowledge and concepts learned previously and applies them. Since the classical method focuses on lots of original literature while including the trivium model, it's rare to find a complete ELA in an all-in-one format. Now, Memoria Press puts together complete classical ELA options made of components using their own or materials from other publishers. They'll pair literature with their own study guides, for example, or add grammar and Latin, composition, handwriting, and language arts workbooks. Another curriculum, Surely English, pairs only grammar and writing together for up through grade 8. And the Well-Trained Mind provides grammar and writing instruction for all grades. For example, combining first language lessons with Writing with Ease. And Old Western Culture by Roman Rhodes Media takes a lecture, whole book, history-focused approach in high school. Another favorite among homeschoolers is the Charlotte Mason approach. It's also heavily teacher-dependent, more so in the early grades, and this model-based approach uses original writings, often read aloud. These are termed living books, and living books are any well-written fiction or nonfiction book that promotes truth and beauty and originality while also engaging the reader. These selections will serve as models for your child to learn how to read and how to write. And from these models, students learn concepts, they study strong writing skills, they practice handwriting and more. And there's a strong emphasis on reading and listening skills, emphasizing quality over quantity. Some complete options using the CM method include learning language arts through literature, English lessons through literature, and Total Language Plus with their complete study guides. The last major approach for ELA homeschool curriculum is Common Core or standards-based ELA. Now, this approach really restructures how and when ELA concepts are taught, integrating language skills across all the curriculum subjects. This approach is also strongly teacher-driven, encouraging students from grades K on up to use all 4 skills: listening, speaking, composing, and reading effectively. These programs are distinctive from other approaches in a few ways. With these standards-based approaches, you'll see differences in the types of reading assigned, the tasks that students are asked to do, and at what age they're asked to do them. Reading and writing assignments are chosen from fiction and nonfiction materials, with particular emphasis on more modern content and texts. Assignments will emphasize such tasks as pairing nonfiction with fiction on a similar topic, doing close reading and responses to literature while maintaining an emphasis on testing. The MyView Literacy and Progress Language Arts are more complete programs using a standards-based approach. Mostas Literature uses this approach for literature studies in the middle grades. At Rainbow, we've developed language arts curriculum comparison charts that will identify these teaching approaches and other important comparison points. And you can find those in our catalog or on the resources page on our website. Now, if you'll remember our family acronym, we've spent a good amount of time on those first two foundational steps: F, faith philosophy, and A, approach. These two items are worth parking on for a time and really evaluating. Working through these two will really simplify your selection process. The rest of our family acronym are the narrowing down factors that help you target in and find a perfect curriculum fit for your student. Now we're ready for the M, which stands for money. And of course, we all have to be mindful of a budget. Based on the philosophies and approaches you've selected, now look at your narrowed down choices with your costs in mind. Now, if you're comparing two similar methodologies and approaches, but one is significantly cheaper, make sure they're each covering all the same subjects and in as much depth. Money is definitely a concern. Current national average for one student for all their subjects is around $900 per year. Remember, home educating is an investment in your child and has long-term benefits, and ELA is one of those essential subjects with ramifications for your child way beyond the subject itself. Your child's development in language arts will affect their development in all the other subjects. Consider your desire versus needs versus costs. And also remember the time versus money balance. I, for example, like to buy things I could print out and save money teaching multiple children, but I spent a lot of my time and money with all that printing. Was it a good choice? Maybe not in retrospect. We have to spend something for learning, and it's usually a choice between spending my time or my money. Now we've looked at F, A, M, faith, philosophy, approach, and money. And these are all the parts of the acronym that are the content factors, what you're studying and why. And once you've considered these, it's time to target in to make your final decision by considering your people factors, which are the remaining parts of this acronym. No matter what excellent curriculum you've lined up, the people factors are what really make or break a curriculum. These are the distinctives that help you determine if a curriculum really is the best fit for your family and for your student. The I stands for individual, and here you'll consider your students' learning styles, development, personality, and needs. Consider your child's learning styles and abilities. What is their default learning method? Are they auditory, visual, tactile, kinesthetic? Does your curriculum need to teach only one learning style? Does this curriculum address your specific child's needs? Remember that each child develops skills differently, and their needs may change as their age and skills and goals mature or change. And at some point, your child will transition from learning a skill as a separate task to learning and using these skills in context. The L in family is lifestyle. Your life situation will affect the curriculum you choose. In the younger years, ELA skill development requires a lot of teacher involvement. A high school student functioning at grade level proficiency who works well independently, that situation might allow you to take on more of a mentor role and then allowing you different curriculum choices. In addition, consider your other unique circumstances with these questions. Are there unique aspects to your family life? Does your spouse work irregular hours or more hours in a certain season? Are you part of that sandwich generation and also have parents to care for? These lifestyle seasons will affect the type of curriculum you choose. You might desire a very time-involved curriculum that everyone's raving about, but because of your current family lifestyle, a different type of curriculum might be a better fit for your current situation, maybe just for short term. The last aspect of Family Way is you. This is the final targeting factor, and even though we are the main teachers and directors of our child's learning, we often ignore our needs as a factor. Consider these questions. What do you need as a teacher? How comfortable are you with ELA? What kind of support do you need? What goals do you have for final outcomes and for the day-to-day? How much structure and detail do you need? Are you okay with an approach that's new to you? How user-friendly is this curriculum for you? Answering these questions is crucial. Now, we've defined what ELA is. We've looked at all the parts needed. We've progressed through the Family Way worksheet. Now, let's put a curriculum together. Let's discuss a couple of fictitious parents to show you how you can apply these ELA principles to your situation. Now, these two families represent a lot of families we've talked to over the years. I've selected two of our consultants' names to represent these mothers who are teaching their children. Our first parent, Deanne, has a kid that's struggling a bit with reading. Her daughter just seemed to flounder and not progress last year. Now, Deanne's done some preliminary reading tests from some online sources and searches that she did, and it seems like her child's right around the beginning of second grade reading level. She's actually starting third grade this fall. So Deanne wants something that will cover all the reading skills and maybe start at the beginning of the reading process to fill in any holes. She's afraid she's missed something. And her daughter is third grade reading level in math, but Deanne really wants to focus in on reading this year. They need something that will work on those reading skills. But Deanne's also concerned about her child being exposed to good reading. She really likes that Charlotte Mason book-based approach. It's her favorite. Also, Deanne's parents have moved in with her family, and she's concerned about the amount of time she'll have to give her daughter. Now, after talking with the Rainbow consultants about these issues, she's examining Happy Cheetah. It's more of a complete language arts, but it's really focusing on those reading skills, and the time requirement meets her busy life. There's handwriting included, but Deanne knows if she needs more practice, adding in spelling uses the same approach. She's also concerned about her daughter's reading comprehension as a goal. Deanne plans on getting one of those Charlotte Mason good book lists, and then her child can practice reading out loud to her parent and also listening to her parent who loves to read out loud and is willing to read to her daughter a few times a week. And she might have her child use the Charlotte Mason narration technique to evaluate the comprehension. She'll need to monitor that technique and see if that tool is really a good fit for this child. She realizes that she may need to change from that really teacher-based history and science program that they've been using and change to something more independent for her two older elementary kids, something they can do on their own with her mentoring. Maybe she'll choose a book-based history approach that will combine all her elementary kids and also include those good books. Her goal for her daughter is that by next year, grade 4, that daughter will be closer to grade level in reading. She may have to reevaluate as they progress, mid-year and also year-end. Now let's meet Janice. She has an older student problem. Janice's only child is entering 8th grade. She really wants to make sure her son is going to be prepared for high school. He's also talking about wanting to go to college. Their single income from her husband is in potential danger of being cut, and Janice may have to go back to work. So it's possible that her son might need to go into a local school for 9th grade. Janice's goals include meeting local standards and college prep. She likes that idea of someone else teaching him writing skills that are on grade level. She feels a little bit uncomfortable with teaching composition. So she's thinking about essentials in writing, which has teacher digital instruction. It's easy to use. There are rubrics for her to grade, and it's pretty reasonably priced. But Janice knows her son needs literature to adequately prepare for upper-level reading skills, and she wants literature that's well-written, maybe even by Christian authors. But she wants to maintain that secular or neutral viewpoint. That'd be nice. She's looking at a discussion-based program so that she and her son will have a time daily where they will touch base with each other, and also to help him prepare for classroom discussions. She's going to investigate the Ready Readers middle school program. She likes that this will direct her discussions. They're going to talk over structure, style, context, and theme, and it also allows them to read whole books, but not too many, so that neither one of them is overwhelmed. There's only 5 books to focus on this year. She likes this aspect and that the answers are provided, but she wonders if she would add a nonfiction reading comprehension. So she adds an inexpensive Jane Irvin's reading comprehension in varied subject matter that will help prepare him for SAT reading, and her son can work on that independently. Now, she realizes with everything else that this particular workbook might have to become a lower priority if life gets too busy. She'd like him also to work on SAT prep vocabulary to make sure he's ready for that in-college entrance exam. So she likes the independence of Wordly Wise 3000 with just the answers. And then she's set. Now, it's time for you to use the family way to put the ELA pieces together. Remember your students' strengths or problem areas. Look for publishers that might master a specific skill or teaching philosophy, etc. Remember to examine the 8-part building brick of ELA that needs to be filled. Based on your ELA definition of proficiency and your goals for your child, your answers to the Family Way worksheet will be ready to build your brick. Take your time to explore options and play around with the options a bit. Remember, finding the right ELA curriculum is not an easy process. In fact, I would argue that it is one of the toughest and the messiest of all the subjects for homeschoolers to select. And once you find a solid option, you may find you need to tweak it a bit to adjust your goals, your child, your situation. But doing so is okay as long as you're not tweaking the whole curriculum down to foundational levels. If you're doing that often and to a large extent, probably indicates you've chosen the wrong curriculum. Finding a good fit will seem like hard work. It is. But investing in understanding language arts and your child's needs and goals, so worth it. And you don't have to make these decisions by yourself. Our consultant team is available for free, 8:30 to 5 Central Time, Monday through Friday, to assist you via phone, 888-841-3456, online chat at rainbowresource.com, or by email, consultants@rainbowresource.com.